Hello there, time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. Joining us are Charlie Wyatt, The Sun's football journalist, and Henry Winter of Sports Illustrated. Welcome to you both. Let me quickly run you through the back pages. And it was Thomas Tuchel's news conference which has once again created the big headline. Bellingham, Kane and Foden can't play together, says the Daily Telegraph. Elsewhere in the paper, the main image is of Ben Stokes. You can see there, bat in hand, balked at criticism of England's prep for the Ashes from what he's called has-beens. Incredible criticism that he's faced in the last couple of weeks, but he comes out swinging, as Ben Stokes always does. How about this in The Sun? 3 lions, 2 spots. That's The Sun's take on Tuchel's dilemma. And sticking with England, this is the back page of The Star. Goody two-shoes, mind-bending footwear, key to Lions' glory bid. We'll delve into this on the show. The Guardian splash on an exclusive. Barca target Kane, Catalan club could trigger £57 million release clause in summer. Meanwhile, a tough night for Earps on her Manchester United return in the Women's Champions League. Yeah, first up then, gents, it's England again. Let's start there, shall we, on the eve of their World Cup qualifier with Serbia. And Thomas Tuchel has, I think, confirmed what we all kind of suspected he was saying from the last international camp, is that there's certain players in this team, standout players, that can't necessarily play together. He's called out Foden, Kane and Bellingham. They can't play in the same England 11 under the current system, he says, Charlie. They've played together before. What's changed?
They have, but you know, it's been frustrating, hasn't it? It's been frustrating to watch. And let's go back to Euro 2024 under Gareth Southgate in Germany. And even though England got to the final, we all know that they weren't playing at their best. And yeah, I think most people will be pleased to hear what Tuchel said. You know, Henry and myself, we're at Tottenham's training ground earlier today. That's where England are training. They're not at St George's Park like normal because it's a short turnaround and they're playing at Wembley tomorrow. They've actually been at Tottenham's training ground. So we're down there and yeah, it's basically a real warning shot. And there's absolutely no doubt now we're going to have some casualties, some big name casualties out of this squad. I mean, England play Serbia tomorrow. They've got Albania on Sunday. And then it's just 2 more games in March until Tuchel names his squad. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how these players react over the next couple of games because the pressure's on them now.
Yeah, we can see the back page of the Times there. Tuchel, 3 stars cannot play together. Henry, is this like the Gerrard, Scholes, Lampard dilemma that we had back in the 2000s?
Similar, except you've got a coach who will make that decision. I mean, interestingly, listening, you know, Charlie was there today, and when you listen to Tuchel speak, he speaks very enthusiastically, individually about the players. He talked about Morgan Rogers with great enthusiasm. He's been his number 10 in recent games. He was very effusive about Jude Bellingham, also about Phil Foden. But I think anyone who's followed England down the years has seen, you know, that the master chef walks into the England kitchen and just tries to be too rich with all the ingredients, and we end up with indigestion. So I think there'll be England fans nodding and saying we've got some fabulous players, particularly at number 10. But the fact is that Tuchel has walked into the squad this week and he's told us, he said, well, Kane's number 9, Bellingham's number 10, Rodgers is a number 10, but, you know, you can't play all of them. So, I mean, it's a warning, but also it's a kind of a stating of the obvious that if you want to balance in this team, which is effectively 4-2-3-1, you've got Anderson and Rice in midfield. You've got Saka on the right. You've probably got Gordon or Rashford on the left. You know, maths is quite simple. You then have a 10 and a 9. And Bellingham is world class. Kane is world class. So those 2 should start. Obviously, Rodgers is going to push Bellingham all the way. But what is great is you've got this coach who's come in and said, actually, competition is good. And he spoke about Rodgers and Bellingham vying for that number 10 role. And he said, well, listen, they are friends, but you can compete and be friends. Remember, they were in England's under-15s together. They are genuine friends. So I think it's really good. I mean, he's stating the obvious. He is saying there has to be competition. But I think if you're Morgan Gibbs-White, you'll look at that and think, well, he's not going to take 5 number 10s. to the World Cup, and you saw the sort of slight mishmash towards the end. You know, Charlie referenced the last Euros. In the final, you know, the last 18, 19 minutes, well, before Foden went off, England had 3 number 10s on the pitch in Palmer, who scored, Bellingham and Foden. So, you know, and it just doesn't really work. So I think we've got an elite coach now who is making tough decisions.
Another subject that came up when Thomas Tuchel speaking to the media is these new shoes that these England players will be wearing. Some of the papers, for example, the Mirror, have called them magic shoes to help them march to World Cup glory. And if you haven't seen these are special footwear that the players will wear to supposedly send positive messages from the feet to the brain. They've been billed as mind-altering shoes, Charlie. What do you make of, I suppose, England turning over every corner to make sure they're in tip-top condition, or is this all just a bit trivial?
Well, I think whoever designed them were on something mind-altering, to be honest. But you know, they're certainly interesting. Esri Konsa came in when he spoke to the media today wearing them, and the first thing he said was, apparently they're going to help my brain, but I don't know how. You know, it is. Look, as Tuchel said at his press conference, I'm happy to have positivity, and if it means that the players can concentrate better at the team meetings, because that's what these shoes are supposed to do. They basically look like sort of big Crocs, really. Tuchel, you know, is open to anything. So, the players are certainly all wearing them today. Let's see how long it continues.
Yeah, different take in the Times, though, Henry. They say England need hunger, not mind-altering shoes for dead rubber games. What's your take?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I like Charlie's back page, which I don't think you carried it at all. I think you carried it inside and you focused on the sort, you know, the football and the on-field and how many number 10s Tuchel can get in, which was, I think, what will be exercising most England fans. I mean, look, apparently they send messages from the shoes, the feet to the brains. But I think we've seen England in tournaments. What we want is seeing messages going from the brains to the feet. That is going to be key, keeping the ball in these hot conditions. With their normal boots on. But look, it's a bit of fun. I mean, it's almost sort of Eileen Jury revisited.
We've already mentioned Harry Kane this evening. Let's go into more detail on this one from The Guardian, because Barca target Kane is the headline, and they say that Catalan club could trigger £57 million release clause in the summer. Harry Kane at the moment, Charlie, playing some of the best football of his career, banging in goals week after week for Bayern Munich. What do you make of this? This is an exclusive by Will Unwin. Could this actually happen?
Well, look, it's certainly not a surprise that Barcelona would like him, because Harry Kane at the moment is playing football, as you said, is an incredible level. He's rewriting history in Germany. That's why Bayern Munich, understandably, are quite keen for him to sign a new contract. And Harry sort of spoke a bit about it last month, where he said, well, you know, maybe that would be a possibility. Of course, there's been talk of him going back to his beloved Tottenham Hotspur. But, you know, I think he's enjoying Germany so much. I think it's a possibility he could stay there. But equally, well, yeah, what a move that would be. Harry Kane going to Barcelona and playing against Jude Bellingham in the El Clasico. I can see why Barca would want him. But I still think that's quite a tough task to get Harry Kane to La Liga.
And Henry, as Will Unwin says in this article, Barcelona have targeted Harry Kane because they would like him as a first-choice target to replace Robert Lewandowski, whose contract expires in June. Good replacement?
Well, absolutely fantastic. Everyone would like Harry Kane. Was it 22 goals in 16 appearances for Bayern Munich this season? He's in fantastic form. I mean, you know, he's absolutely loving life out in Munich. His family's obviously enjoying it as well. But, you know, Barcelona is a magnificent place. But I think this one has got a little bit to run. But you can absolutely understand their interest. But maybe there's a little bit of a contract dance going on with Lewandowski as well between the club and the player there. Yeah,
exactly. But I wonder, would this make an impact on Kane's domestic football and hence how he plays for England if he was to switch clubs, Charlie? Does it matter? He's still playing at the top level at Bayern Munich or at Barcelona, is he not?
Yeah, I think it would be great for him. And him going to Bayern Munich has been, fantastic for him. I'm really pleased that Harry has really proved some people wrong because they thought that, once he left Spurs, his superpowers would end. And I always thought it was crazy that Manchester United didn't try and sign him along with Declan Rice. Because they were the sort of players I think they should have, really been looking to bring in. But Harry's gone to Germany. He's had a bit of, he's had some critics in Germany as well last season when some was saying that he wasn't always playing his best in the big games, but he's done that. He got his first title, and it seemed to really lift the pressure on him because he's playing brilliantly now. And of course, in Germany, even though he denied it at the time, he was definitely playing with a bit of a back injury picked up while playing for Tuchel at Bayern Munich. But it's so important for England that Kane in the United States and Mexico and Canada at the World Cup is playing injury-free and with his confidence at its highest. And at the moment, that's certainly the case. And that's why Barcelona want him.
Yeah, totally understandable, isn't it? Charlie, Henry, for the moment, thank you very much. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we'll be looking at more of the sports stories in the morning's newspapers, including this in the Times, as the PFA make their point to the Premier League over an important vote happening next week. You're watching Back Pages tonight. Welcome back to Charlie Wyatt, the Sun's football journalist, and Henry Winter of Sports Illustrated. Let's look at the back pages of the Times then, and carrying this story about the PFA taking on the Premier League. Premier League could start war with players if it brings in salary cap. Now, just a bit of background information on this. Premier League clubs are considering replacing the current profitability and sustainability rules with new squad cost regulations. As part of that, there's this thing called anchoring, where player costs could be limited to 5 times the amount that the bottom club receives from the Premier League. So, for example, for this season, that would be about £550 million. The hope is that this will prevent the richest clubs from pulling ahead of their rivals, making the league less competitive and less appealing. But the PFA are strongly opposed to what they see as a salary cap and a threatened legal action as a result. Henry, what's your reaction to this?
Well, it's a very interesting story by Matt Lawton. I mean, I think that the PFA, the Players' Union, is always going to be against salary caps. It's interesting that it seems like they've already brought in a very sort of heavyweight KC with experience of football matters and success in dealing with footballing issues. So they are taking it very seriously because obviously they do not want a salary cap. They want players to be able to negotiate as much as they want. I mean, there's a slight sort of caveat in all this in that a lot of the clubs are obviously involved in Europe and they come into sort of UEFA's rules on FFP and financial matters. So, but yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's sad in a way, but then everything in football seems to come down to money.
Yeah, more and more, doesn't it? Now, Martin Ziegler and Matt Lawton have described this as what could become a war, Charlie, between the Premier League and the players. Is that your take on it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the PFA are going to fight hard for the players, as they have done previously, because there have, of course, been attempts to bring in similar sort of caps. But look, I get it from both sides, of course, that the Premier League have to do something. The clubs have to do something. I mean, the money involved at the moment, you're comparing the money in the Premier League compared to Italy and Spain and Germany. The average wage of a Premier League player now is around sort of £65,000-70,000. That's average. And even clubs like Sunderland, they're obviously doing really well, but they've had to spend 140 million pounds to be competitive. Ipswich spent that and they still went down. That's crazy. That cannot continue. You cannot have clubs throwing that amount of money at Premier League football, because the wages are colossal. So something has to be done, and I think there'll be a trade-off somewhere. But yeah, I can see why the PFA obviously trying to get a good deal for the players. And of course, going back to COVID times, clubs were trying to do pay cuts and that sort of stuff as well, weren't they? So, but since then, I think we thought there was going to be a reset in wages, and that clearly hasn't happened in the last 2 and 3 years. Even going down to the Championship, League One, League Two, the wages in football have rocketed.
Yeah, for this proposal to be accepted, 14 clubs would need to vote in favour of it, Henry. But the Premier League, from their point of view, would say, unless we impose these new rules, the richest clubs will just carry on getting richer, pull further ahead. There'll be so much disparity between those at the top of the table and those at the bottom that the table will be less competitive, the league will be less competitive and less appealing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. And imagine if you're a fan of one of the clubs and you're listening to this and you see the ticket prices that you pay in difficult economic times being hiked. And I know we've got sort of overseas owners who are used to this, but it's, you've got to think of the fans in all this, because, the players, whether they're on 120 grand a week or 130 grand a week, that 10 grand a week, how much difference does it really make to them? Whereas that sort of money, if the clubs were able to keep that, and rather than sort of, give it to agents or keep any of it for themselves, actually invested that in the supporters and actually made ticket prices a little bit more sensible, because you're seeing protests across the country in the Premier League and elsewhere about ticket prices. I've always had the same view on wages. Absolutely, the players should get their best deal. But all these salaries should be more performance related. If you look at a player's contract, a lot of it is performance related, goals, assists, all that sort of stuff. But it should be made more performance related, because it's a competitive industry. And if it enhances their hunger to actually go out and score a goal or get more points for their clubs or get higher up the table, because each position is worth, 2.8 million, £3 million, then absolutely they should get a cut of that. But make it performance related. And then if there is money left over, let's actually address the ticket price issue we've got in this country, because there's not going to be too much sympathy for players on this.
In a statement, the Premier League have said, we disagree with the PFA's views regarding the proposed financial rules and the extensive consultation process that we have been conducting with our clubs and other stakeholders. That vote is on the 21st of November, so no doubt we will be talking about this again on Back Pages tonight. OK, let's move on to Wolves and Rob Edwards finally being confirmed as their new head coach. Carried in The Guardian, this one. Rob Edwards confirmed as Wolves head coach with tasks to refresh whole club, it says. Charlie, he's had a lot of stick from the Borough fans because he was only at the club for about 6 months or less than 6 months and left with the club second in the table. He's taken over a Premier League side bottom of the table that are really struggling. But you can understand perhaps that he has a special connection with this club. He used to play for them and actually was interim manager for a couple of games.
It's his club. He, as you said, he's interim manager, he's played for them, he's coached there. He lives near there. Wolves is his team. And I can totally understand why Borough fans are raging, of course. But, Rob Edwards, he will feel he has to go there. He has a duty to go back there. And he's got one hell of a challenge, isn't he? I don't know, whether he's going to keep Wolves in the Premier League. He'll still believe he can, but ultimately, I think Wolves have got to accept the fact that even if they do go down, they've still got, a terrific manager to bring them back up. Of course, there is a chance that Wolves could be going down and Borough going the other way. And of course, Borough fans would absolutely love that. But I do really understand why he's decided to take that job at Molineux, even though it looks an extremely difficult one.
Yeah, it does look extremely difficult, doesn't he? Richard Jolly in The Independent says that Wolves made Rob Edwards an offer he should have refused. I wonder, though, Henry, even if the club are bottom and in serious trouble, it's the opportunity to manage in one of the best leagues in the world still, isn't it?
Well, the best league in the world. And you can understand that. You can understand that from an emotional element, as Charlie says, his connection with the club and also the fact that his family's nearby. He's got an 11-year-old son. But you know what? That's a sort of decision about his family that he should have made before going to Middlesbrough, which is, 170 miles away. I mean, Middlesbrough hasn't moved in the last sort of 5-6 months. It's, still in the same place. And so I don't quite get that. I mean, talking to agents and a couple of managers ever since this sort of story broke, they say, that's kind of what managers do. And that is the trade-off that they do. And a lot of them live close to the M6 so they can get around the country anyway. And obviously it's difficult for the families because they tend to sort of, often stay in one place. I absolutely have huge sympathy, not only for Middlesbrough fans, as Charlie rightly says, but also for a very loyal chairman in Steve Gibson, who was basically being really let down here. And I thought what was particularly significant, and whether he intended it or not, I don't know, but Adi Vivash, when he spoke after the Middlesbrough very good performance and win at the weekend with Edwards having gone, or having been stood down, he spoke about the sort of the culture of the club and the identity. And there was a banner up amongst the Middlesbrough fans saying, we only want people who sort of deserve to be here, or the fans deserve, a manager who wants to be here. So, look, Edwards speaks a lot about family as a club, and obviously his own family has probably dictated this, but they could easily pass paths in the summer. But one thing, you can change the manager at Wolves, but you've got to change the recruitment and the approach to recruitment, because if you keep selling your best players and not replacing them with quality, you're going to go down.
Yeah, all eyes will be on his first presser, won't it, when he takes over as head coach on a permanent basis. OK, let's talk Ben Stokes. Ashes. We're just over a week to go now until that first test in Perth. On the back of the Telegraph, big picture of Ben Stokes. Stokes hits out England captain rails against has-beens. There's been some criticism from former England captains, Gooch, Vaughan, and they say that, Charlie, that they haven't prepared in the right way. They should be playing Australian domestic sides, not an England's Lions side. What do you make of this?
Yeah, look, it's a really interesting story. Of course, Ben Stokes has lobbed the grenade back. And, his argument is that England are preparing for the Ashes in the same way that they're prepared for their previous 5 series going abroad. On each occasion, did win the first test. So he is able to back that up. But equally, Michael Vaughan, Graham Gooch, Lord Botham, they're pointing to the fact that, the Ashes is different. You do need to have better quality opposition. You need to prepare properly, of course. I think the current England setup will be arguing that actually it was difficult to get decent opposition in Australia because of the way their calendar is at the moment. So yeah. I see both sides, but it's a really interesting story. It
really is. And in the Telegraph, Michael Vaughan has written back to Ben Stokes to say that he should show respect to the so-called has-beens. What do you make of that, Henry? Is it all a bit distasteful?
I mean, there's right on both sides, but where Ben Stokes is completely wrong is to call Gooch, 118 tests, Botham 102 odd tests, amazing Ashes performance. You cannot call these greats of the game has-beens. That's the only thing that Stokes has really done wrong here, because there is logic, as Charlie says, with some of his argument. But we're used to England captains having a go at the Australians, and now we're having a go at sort of some of our own legends. So has-beens, I thought, was distasteful.
Is this a reminder of last year, by the way, at the Euros? Yeah. Remember, Gareth Southgate was getting and the England camp really frustrated with some really strong comments from pundits. Yeah. Charlie Wyatt, Henry Winter, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us on Back Pages. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see it again at hour. The show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can join us again on Thursday night, where our guests will be Jonathan Liu and David Ornstein. Coming next here on Sky Sports News, Thomas Tuchel says that Foden, Bellingham and Kane cannot play in the same system. More next.